Alrighty. Hello, everybody. My name is Nick Toomey, and I am from Sacramento, California. And I am really excited to be presenting on this topic today to share with the class. This topic that I'm presenting on is living with an alcoholic parent, an overview of the social, psychological, and physical effects of an adolescent dealing with parental alcoholism. It's definitely a topic that is fitting for a lot of people in America and all over the world. And so I hope that you guys find something useful out of this. So to kind of give a brief overview, how do you know if you are dealing with alcoholism? A lot of people think that alcoholism is just a person who drinks a lot. So is it defined as drinks per week? Is this something that a doctor can diagnose? Is it something that's like in our DNA? So the definition is alcoholism, now known as alcohol use disorder, is a condition in which a person has a desire or physical need to consume alcohol, even though it has a negative impact on their life. In the past, a person with this condition was referred to as an alcoholic. All right. So negative impacts, but continue to drink. That's basically the overall best example of what a true alcoholic is. So they continue to have negative impacts, but they continue to drink anyways. So examples include, according to the Diagnostic of Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, is you often drink alcohol in larger amounts or over a longer period than you intended. You want to cut down or control your alcohol use, but your efforts may be unsuccessful. You spend a lot of time getting alcohol, using it, and recovering from it. You have cravings. Your use causes you to fail your obligations at work, school, or home. You continue to use it despite these issues in your relationships. You give up or reduce your participation in important social, occupational, or rec activities because of your use. You'll use it when it's physically hazardous, such as driving, operating machinery, performing surgery, and you continue to use it even though you're having issues, physically and psychological ones. And you experience alcohol tolerance, meaning you got to drink more to get to that same level of feeling good, and the cycle just continues. So clearly, these behaviors are going to have an effect on the children, right? If you have an alcoholic mom or a dad who is experiencing all of these symptoms, it's going to affect the kid, no doubt, right? So there was a study that I got to check out. I looked on EBSCOhost, and this report I found it to be super interesting, so I hope you guys do too. It looks at the social effects on adolescents living with an alcoholic parent. So the study examined the severity of a parent's alcoholism, two factors, so the severity of the drinking, and then family topic avoidance. So those were the two factors they're looking at, is how much they drank, and were the kids in the family able to talk about it, or did they avoid the topic, as the two factors associated with family members' perception of stigma. Now, when it comes to stigma, there's three types of stigma that they are kind of using to reference. So a negative appraisal, a negative view on the individual. So there's three types of stigma. There's discrimination stigma, disclosure stigma, and positive aspect stigma. So in plain English, this study investigated 622 adults that had alcoholic parents. They were children at the time, now they're adults, to see the relationship between the severity of the drinking and the avoidance of confronting the issue, and how that affected the child's interaction with their community. So that's discrimination stigma. Obviously, if you have a drinking mom or a drinking dad that's very heavy, maybe the child's friends will look at them differently. Maybe those parents will not want those kids to come over to the child's house, right? So there's a lot of this discrimination that could be happening. Also disclosure stigma, right? And that's the issue about, are you able to talk about it? Is this something that's buried under wraps and everybody thinks it's just keeping up with the Joneses, but really inside a bunch of bad stuff is going on? Or are the kids in the family able to talk about this issue and it's okay to talk about? And then the last type of stigma was actually a positive aspect stigma. And these are the small group of people that see this as almost like a challenge to rise above and become stronger as a result of it. So some of these adults look back on their life and they see that their alcoholic mom or dad caused them to become stronger individuals due to their resilience. So we'll kind of look at all these three aspects. So the results, there was 5 hypotheses that were made. And the first one was that the more alcohol involved, the more discriminated the child feels and is less likely to talk about it. It does not help with their positive aspect. So what this means is the more alcohol that's involved, the more discriminated the child is going to feel. And that basically means like the people in the community, parents, teachers, they're going to feel more ostracized from that community, because if your dad is drinking all the time, they're going to feel like they're not able to talk about it. They're different than everybody else. And obviously you're less likely to talk about it. It doesn't help with your positive aspect. The second one, avoiding discussion of the issue affects the discrimination and the disclosure stigma negatively, but positively impacts the positive aspect stigma. So this means that families that avoid discussion that dad's an alcoholic or mom's an alcoholic, those families that avoid the issue, it definitely affects how the kid feels in his community. If he's ostracized from the community, if he feels like the kid who's got a drunk dad, right, he's going to feel discriminated against. Also, disclosure, obviously he's not allowed to talk about it. But what's interesting is the positive aspect people felt that when it came to this issue, it didn't affect them, and they thought that they could rise above it. And maybe it was like, oh, that part of my life didn't affect me because I'm stronger than that. The third hypothesis, when discrimination and disclosure stigmas are present, depressive symptoms are likely to occur. Very clearly obvious. If you are a child and you feel like you're different, people judge you because you have this alcoholic parent, you're going to feel discriminated against. And if you're not able to talk about it, or if you're not able to talk about it truthfully, it's totally going to impact your self-esteem. However, the positive aspect people is positively associated with self-esteem due to resilience. So these people saw this as a chance to prove themselves that their self-esteem can be stronger, they're tougher, they're more resilient, and they're able to rise above the situation despite the fact that they have alcoholic parents. The last one, discrimination/disclosure stigma are negatively associated with resilience. So if you're being discriminated against because of your situation, and if you're not able to talk about it, those types of people are not going to do well. They're going to feel oppressed. These children are not going to feel like they have much hope. But the positive aspect people thought that they could rise above that and become better people as a result of that. Obviously, if you haven't figured it out by now, the reason why I speak on this so passionately is because I grew up in a alcoholic family. My dad was an alcoholic. And so when I read these, I definitely saw myself as a child thinking on the more positive aspect stigma. I thought that I was tough because I had to deal with this situation at home, that no one else really understood it, that I was going to be tough and rise above it. Interestingly enough, though, on my own perspective, as I look back, it seemed to be a barrier, like a cover up for what was really going on. So just some insight on personal insight when it comes to these little hypotheses. So any limitations or criticism of the report, the first one is pretty big, is that there were 537 female and only 85 male participants. So I would have liked to see an equal number of like 300 female, 300 male to try to make it more clear, but it's hard to get that many people to participate. The other area was white or Caucasian participants were over 90%. So really mainly what you're looking at is the experience of white females. And I would have loved to see a more diverse culture that was surveyed, as well as more males. And lastly, this is an online survey, and so the only ones who participated felt open enough to discuss. That means that there's a lot of people who have dealt with alcoholism who don't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They're never going to talk about it. And so you're never going to get their perspective on this. Only the ones who feel like they are able to chat. And so the people that they marketed towards were towards Alcoholic Anonymous, Al-Anon type of websites where people saw these surveys and they took the surveys. And so people obviously who were willing to talk about it because they're going onto those sites were marketed towards. So, all right, fact. Children of alcoholics are 4 times more likely than any other children to become alcoholics themselves. That's a pretty crazy stat, right? And so the question that kind of naturally follows is alcoholism inherited? Is there an alcoholic gene, or is this more of an environment thing, and the kids just over generations see their parents drink and then they get involved with it, right? I know me growing up, I kind of always heard that my family has the alcohol gene in a kind of weird way that I wasn't really sure what that meant. And so I wanted to kind of see, is there any truth to this? Is there any type of gene that is fixed towards making somebody want to drink and have an addiction to alcohol? So the search for the alcoholic gene, they have done some research about looking into the genes that are associated with alcohol. So the first one, ADH1B, this gene is associated with hot flashes, red face, being uncomfortable when drinking alcohol. If a person has this gene, it's actually a deterrent to alcoholism. So this means that, if you're getting hot, you're getting a red face, you don't really like the feeling, this actually would be a deterrent to somebody who wants to drink a lot. There is a mutation of the GABRB1 gene. And so this gene basically helps you relax at the end of your workday. It allows you to feel content, feel enjoyment, happiness towards the end of your workday. But if it's mutated, it makes it a little bit more difficult to relax, and drinking helps that. So if you have this mutation, maybe it might be a gene that is associated with people who fall into alcoholism more. The last one is beta-klotho. This gene is associated with being satisfied with drinking less rather than drinking more. So this gene would be a deterrent too. There's some people that that can go out to bars or parties or a dinner with friends, and they'll have 1 glass of wine, 1 beer, and totally are content. They never even feel like they even want to have a second one. While there's others who enjoy drinking multiple glasses, and they're not alcoholics either, but there's a difference between the two. Some people are like strictly 1 drink drinkers, and this would be some type of deterrent for that. Maybe my wife has that, because I don't think I've never seen her have more than 1 glass of wine in a sitting ever. That's just her personality, right? So that comes down to the question then. So is this a nature thing? Is this a genetic thing to be predetermined to an alcoholic lifestyle? Or is it a nurture thing? Are you raised in your environment and you see all of this stuff surrounding the bottle, and so you inevitably enter into that because of your environment? So these genes are few. There's a few of them, and there's also a lot more that they've researched. But the bottom line is there's no long-term study to give hard, substantial evidence that a person can have the alcoholic gene. So then why does alcoholism tend to run generationally, right? I mean, like I said, my older brother's an alcoholic, my younger brother's an alcoholic. I'm not. But my dad is, my grandpa was, my great-grandpa was. So, and this is a very normal and known thing. So why does this tend to happen to run in the family? Well, I would think that data shows that it would be your environment, right? Nature versus nurture, your environment. And so if you are raised in an environment where alcohol is being used as medication, if it's being used multiple times a week, all the time, in any type of fun environment, in any type of, in multiple situations, it is always going to be, whether that's for good or for bad, the kid is going to associate that as something that's important to the parent, right? And so these are the more practical things on how a child experiences alcoholism, and I thought it'd be helpful to kind of look through. So a child may feel embarrassed, angry, or sad about the parent's substance abuse, worried about their parents' health or safety, worried for themselves or their siblings, scared, alone, unsafe at home, frustrated when their parent doesn't change, relieved when their parent takes steps to recover. It's hard for them to trust or relax